Hi, welcome back to our channel. It's been a while since we've done any type of practical living, homesteading type video, but lately we've been having a little bit of trouble with the burn in the stove box on our Ashland cab and tinder wood cook stove. When we lived on our farm in Liberty, we had an identical stove to this. This is not the one, but it's one exactly like it. And what we're having a problem with now is when we open the wood box, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but you can see smoke poofs out whenever we open it. And so also the glass here constantly soots up and we have to clean it. I like to see the fire, so I'm always scraping it clean and trying to, you know, keep it so that I can see the actual fire in the wood box. To me, the ambiance is just very pleasing. But I would just like to walk through some things, and the general principles of this will apply to any wood stove, but I'm specifically talking about a wood cook stove right now. And the reason is because I'm using it to cook. I have some millet baking in the oven, I have some flatbreads on the top cooking, I have something in the little pot cooking, and I have seeds dehydrating on the top. There's just so many things that you can use a wood cook stove for. I use it to dry my laundry. I use it again to dehydrate, to cook on the stove top, to cook things on the inside. I mean, just so many things. And since heat rises, you can put your hand on the stone foundation underneath this even when there's a very hot fire, and you can easily hold your hand on that. So if you have wood that's just gotten a little bit wet with the rain or what have you, you can put it right underneath there and safely dry that wood out. At any rate, getting a little off track, but there's three basic elements that are necessary, and you probably remember this from just basic high school science or grade school science. There's three elements that are necessary for fire, and those three elements are fuel, oxygen, and heat. And so anytime you have a problem with the burn in your wood cook stove, it's one of those three elements. And so you just have to kind of walk through mentally, okay, I have fuel, does it have enough oxygen, is there enough heat? Sometimes it's easy to think that, well, I've got just a few coals in the bottom, well, I can just load it up with wood and expect it to burn into a nice fire. Well, that's not the case. In that case, you would have too much fuel and too little heat. Even if you had enough oxygen, with enough oxygen eventually it might burn, but it might not. And so just looking at those three components, anytime that you have a problem getting your wood to burn, and I've taken some pictures over the course of the last week or two, and I hope to drop those in so that you can see examples of what I'm talking about when I talk about this. So let's say, for instance, our problem is when we open the door, the smoke comes out into the room. What would cause that? It's cold outside. It's probably right now, I'd say in the upper 20s. There's some snow on the ground, so there should be plenty of draw. What I mean by draw is that's the force of the air pulling up the chimney, and as your heat increases in your wood box, it's going to make that draw even better, okay, because heat wants to rise. The colder it is outside, the better your draw. Now, there is on the back, if you look at our, I think I called it Ashland Cabin Tinder Cook Stove Review or something. Anyway, I'll try to put a link in the description. The other video that I did on this particular model of cook stove, in the back, there's what's called a thermostat, and that thermostat is controlled by a little dial, and that lets, you know, a certain amount of air in or out. Now, sometimes there's a little ash pan underneath here, and I don't know if you can see it because the door's all sooted up right now, but when I open this ash pan, it's going to draw air from the room even more to increase the heat of that fire. And if I open this now, you'll see it's going a little bit more vigorously than it was than whenever I had it closed down. But that thermostat in the back, whenever you first start a fire, you want to have that wide open or have this bottom door slightly cracked so that you have more air. Okay, But with us, again, getting back to the issue that we're having right now, when we open the door, the smoke wants to come out. It's cold. There's plenty of air getting to the fire. I have the thermostat about halfway. I can even open the bottom door, and still, when I open this door to the wood box, smoke comes out. So what might the problem be? The chimney's clogged. Okay, and so we're going to clean the chimney today, and I'm not going to video that because we did that on the other cook stove video that I did, so that's already covered. But the reason why our chimney has clogged up so quickly, usually I like to clean my chimney at least once during the winter, sometimes twice. And in the scenario where we are right now, probably we need to do it 2 or 3 times in the winter. We're going to reconfigure the setup of the stove in the back so that it's a little bit better. But this stove is a little bit oversized for the living space that we have. This is a 500 square foot cabin that we're staying in right now. This is a little bit too much beef for this little stove, this little cabin. But the cabin does have a second floor, but it's not done yet. It's not open. So once that second story is open, this stove will be fine for this size building. So because the stove is oversized, we often have to run it what's called damped down. In other words, we have to cut off some of the air supply so we don't have such a big fire. Otherwise, it would be 100 degrees in here. I mean, not kidding. And so I've got a window about halfway open right here behind me. The one in the kitchen's about 1/3 of the way open, and the one back in the sleeping area is probably open a couple of inches, and it's still quite toasty in here, even with just kind of a moderate fire. That's really nice. You see the smoke coming out. So that's not a roaring fire. It's a nice hot fire for baking and cooking. But I have it a little bit damped down. You know, I have a little bit less air than it really needs. So just remember those 3 components whenever you are trying to get your fire to burn. If you're having a problem with it, ask yourself, is it getting enough oxygen? If I have enough oxygen open in the thermostat, or if you have a damper or whatever you have on your style of stove, if it has enough oxygen and it's still pushing the smoke out, then probably I need to clean the chimney. And that's a very dangerous scenario. You really want to keep your chimney clean because chimney fires are very, very dangerous. Okay, then the other thing, make sure that you have enough fuel and make sure you have enough heat for the amount of fuel that you have. Now I think I took a picture of this one. The ideal time to add wood to your firebox is when you have a large, and even the piece of wood can still look solid, but if you tap it with another little, I usually just use we do have a fire poker, and sometimes you can use that. I just use a little round stick, and I reach in there and just tap, and if the log falls apart into large coals, that's the ideal time to refeed your stove, because you've got a lot of heat there. Those coals are very hot, and if it's burning like that, you have plenty of oxygen. So what you need then is fuel. So you need to add fuel. So just remember those 3 things whenever you're troubleshooting any kind of problem with getting your wood cook stove or any other kind of wood stove, for that matter, to burn. Do I have enough oxygen? If not, where's the problem? Is it in the chimney? Is it, what's going on? Troubleshoot that. Do I have enough heat? You can't just load up a firebox with great huge pieces of firewood. I can't come in the morning with just a handful of coals and put a big piece of oak like this in there and expect it to take off. Ain't happening. So you need some smaller pieces, some kindling, what we call kindling. Smaller pieces like this in there first that are going to be easier to heat up, because you got to have the heat, and once they heat up and begin to burn, then they can in turn help the larger pieces to ignite. So that's just very simple, straightforward kind of troubleshooting things to remember whenever you're using any kind of wood stove, particularly wood cook stove. They have a much smaller firebox, so you don't have a lot of room to play with in there. But again, whenever you have to run it down like that and you have problems with the chimney, you know, being clogged up or whatever, it's going to cause a lot more of the soot. This is actually not solid. This is a piece of glass, and you can see this stuff that comes off. I don't know if it's showing up on the camera, but at any rate, if that's piling up on this glass right here, it's all in the chimney, and I need to get that out. I need to clean it out. So that's the issue here, and I will tell you, when we hook this stove up, in order to get it in here, we have 2 elbows, and that's not ideal. It's ideally just straight up out the roof, but there's not a lot of room to play with in a cabin this size, and so we tried to configure it with 2 elbows to get the wood stove in the position that we wanted and get it out the chimney. But we're gonna have to reconfigure that, and maybe I'll do a little bit of update on that whenever we do. But I'll take the camera back there and show you what we have now and explain what we need to do. This is really not ideal, but you know, we're just trying to work with what we have. At any rate, this is going to be changed. It's all going to be taken apart. You can see it's really, this is a poor installation, and we did it, you know, just trying to work with what we had. But we're going to turn the wood stove and try to just have 1 elbow right there going straight up, so that we only have 1 elbow down here, because with all of this horizontal pipe here, it's a lot of opportunity for soot to build up and creosote and junk and clog up your airflow. So we're going to fix that. One other thing that I want to mention about making sure that you have enough oxygen is if you have too many ashes in the bottom of your wood box, then that is going to kind of keep it from getting enough oxygen. This particular stove has what's called a shaker grate. You put this little device on here, and let's see if I can get it one-handed and hold the camera. My hands are not real strong these days. So you can put this on here, and you can maybe see some of the ashes coming down. Anyway, that gets the ashes out of the wood box so that it can get more air because the thermostat is hooked up in the back of where the ash plate is. And then you also want to make sure that this ash box right here, this comes out, is not full, because if that's full, that will prevent your wood stove from getting enough oxygen as well. And again, you can see the soot buildup here on the inside of this door, so you know this stove. And another problem that we had was we bought, I've always cut my own firewood and made sure I had good stuff, but we're in a position right now where we have to buy it. And we bought some wood from a man who, the wood was wet when we picked it up. It had been out in the rain, and he assured us that it was cured or seasoned, and it was not. What that means, seasoned wood is wood that has been cut and split and allowed to dry out at least 6 months. If you try to burn green wood or wood that's just been cut, good luck. It's going to cause a lot of problems with soot buildup and smoke, and it'll clog up your chimney, and it's very difficult to get it to burn properly. So you really need, like this winter, you need to be cutting your wood for next winter.